Since the day I found you, I wanna stay around.
Good afternoon from Mickey and from me from Castle Goring. Well, I think we need to take an amused and entertaining approach to what is going on. I know it's basically serious, but a degree of levity is called for when one is dealing with lunacy. And when one is really dealing with pretentiousness raised to a level of piffledom that actually makes it monarchic or maybe even imperial. So I think we should sort of just plunge right in and be wildly entertained by dear old H and dear old May. Well, H's wife, I think. We could call her H's wife. Sarah Butler says, Lady C, I think I speak for many when I ask what is in the in-depth story of Harry's reception from the family. Shackleton on expedition, that's Sir Ernest Shackleton, would have received a warmer welcome from the penguins, I imagine. Well, I have an awful feeling, my dear, that your imagination has accorded with the reality. Because, yes, I am pretty sure that, in fact, the welcome was actually as chilly as that which Shackleton received when he was surrounded by the penguins. Because the fact of the matter is, you cannot expect to treat people as if they're dirt and then expect them to treat you as if you are something special and as if you are a uniquely wonderful person who is a gift to humanity. I know that there's a certain couple that has the attitude that they are God's gift to humanity. But I'm afraid, having kicked sand in people's faces, he was accorded a very frosty reception. And let's remember, for the first few days he was supposed to be self-isolating. He was supposed to be in quarantine. So there was no great deal of interaction in reality with anybody, not officially at any rate, because he was supposed to be quarantining and self-isolating. So you can imagine the Zooms and the telephone calls that bounced between California and Windsor. On the same theme, Margaret McKee says, I don't understand how on earth Harry could possibly expect a warm welcome. Did he not realize the Oprah show was shown over here? I think not only did he realize it, my dear, but he had to pretend that he didn't give a continental damn. My understanding is that he actually was wrong-footed in that interview. And of course, the problem is when you're hooked on someone, you are really at their mercy. And he's hooked on her. I mean, he's as hooked on her as, well, let's not even go with the analogies that spring to mind in case YouTube decides they're inappropriate. But, yeah. I think he tried to brazen it out, but that's something else again. Yeah. I think he's found himself between a rock and a hard place. And the problem with accepting and buying the lie is that the other parties to the transaction who know that it's a lie aren't really interested in buying the lie. So, he really is caught between Planet Markle and Planet Earth. Very awkward position for him to be in. Very awkward. Next question. Tasneem says, "Here, evening, my lady," with a big heart. "Yea, first, heart, smiling face, hands clasped, as if it's the Prince of Wales greeting everybody. Sorry, big kid," she says in parentheses. "Lady C, have you heard about the supposed leak from Harry's baby's mama? The Queen called her for a chat. Can you explain anything about this? So many believe it, like Harry's first wife has the Queen on speed dial or something. Oh my dear, you are a very disrespectful and naughty person. How dare you for 1 second think that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II is not suitably humbled and knows her place, and not only has her granddaughter-in-law on speed dial, but rings up and begs to be answered and begs to speak to her. Why would you think anything else was not only possible, but likely? Honestly, you really must not disparage greatness. You really just don't understand. We are dealing with a great individual. And of course, any monarch, especially the world's most eminent monarch, would be absolutely thrilled to have this great entity on speed dial, and not only that, feel duly honoured when her calls are accepted. My goodness, the aspirations of a monarch, can you believe it? To actually be thrilled when your granddaughter-in-law, a 2-bit actress and hustler by her own account. Well, she didn't say she was a 2-bit hustler, but she said she was a hustler. I'm saying she's a 2-bit hustler. And everybody else who has eyes in their head, ears in their head, brains in their head, knows that she's a hustler, and she described herself very accurately. And the problem with people like Harry's wife is, even though they know that what they're saying is rubbish, they can't help themselves. It just spills out. It is like somebody who has diarrhea, except the flushing of the system is not from the orifice upon which I am sitting. It is from the orifice through which I am speaking. And it just spews forth. That is actually a feature of a certain type of disordered personality. They know it's rubbish. They know that the likelihood is that you're not going to bite, but they can't help themselves. It just comes out like, where did that thought come from? Pounds out of their mouth before they even have time to monitor it. That's one interpretation. The other interpretation is that we are dealing with somebody who's very calculating, very strategic, very cold-blooded, and who has really a degree of what the French call sang-froid that would make an Arctic iceberg seem warm, and knows exactly what she's doing, and is doing it because it plays well with the audience in America which she has targeted and which she is paying a great deal of money to PR people to plant all sorts of stupid rubbish stories in the knowledge that the parties involved are not going to specifically deny the claims that they make on her behalf. There are times when it actually suits you to deny, but the royal policy is to not deny. They play a longer game because they know that today's news wraps tomorrow's fish. And quite frankly, sometimes it stinks just as much as fish that has gone off. Shirley MacLaine says, I believe MM has said that she spoke to the Queen prior to the service. Honestly, is nothing private? Must it always be sent in a press release? Well, of course it must be sent in a press release, my dear. I mean, there's hardly any point in marrying into royalty when you're a superb merchandiser if you don't flog your wares and if you don't sort of like a really rather tacky tradesman in a Turkish souk going real fake Gucci for a fantastic price. I mean, of course she's going to. Of course they're going to. You know, it's pathetic. I mean, it really is pathetic. And I don't know who she thinks believes all of this hogwash. You know, well, I know who she thinks believes it. All the idiots and dupes that she's managed to dupe. And the irony is, in situations like that, with people like that, on the very odd occasion when they actually do come out with something that is deserving of being believed and of recognition, do you remember the old children's tale of Wolf and the boy who cried wolf? Wolfie. We're speaking about Wolfie. Tess Battler says, Lady C, what can you say about Harry's wife's latest PR stunt of telling Mag magazine that she and Archie are talking to the Queen? Thank you for enlightening us regarding this. I very much enjoyed listening to you. God bless you and your family. Thank you. Well, I mean, this is really more of the same, isn't it? First of all, I'd never heard of Mag magazine. I had to look it up. You know, I have to say, I can understand why people read pap like that. You know, it's a brain chiller. It chills your brain. It makes you sort of not think. And the fact is, PRs need to place stories, and they need to place stories that they hope are going to show their clients in a positive light. And what more positive light can a hustler who is intent on merching the prestige of a royal family aim for than being regarded by the gullible elements of the public that are stupid enough to believe the nonsense that she is a revered member of the family, in close touch with the Queen, who absolutely worships at her altar and is enthralled to her in much the same way that the Queen's grandson is. Now, I am not saying that the Queen has not maintained civil familial relations with Meghan and Harry, because my understanding is that she has. She is very non-confrontational. She leaves it up to her staff or other members of the family. Prince Philip used to run interference for her. Charles and William, in this regard, are running interference for her. So I have no doubt that there is a slight element of truth occasionally to the claims of the Queen being on the blower to Meghan 8 times a day, 8 days a week, and that she actually spends her whole life trying to get through to Meghan so that Meghan will condescend to receive her call. I tell you, the rubbish that is put out there. Thank God I'm not in PR. Lynn Sebastian says, what do you think of the statement that Catherine had scramblers in the bow of her dress so that no conversations could be recorded? I don't know if it's true, but it would have been smart for her to do so. Well, if she didn't, she would have been wise to. But I don't think she needed to, because she's pretty measured. And, you know, she was the invitation. Oh, she's the one who, because, you know, she was the one who broke the ice superficially, then stepped back, because she and Harry had a wonderful relationship, as indeed did William and Harry. But William and Harry's relationship always had more edge to it than his relationship with Catherine did. So she was the perfect person to break the ice, and Harry knew this. This is why he approached her. However, she stepped back, and thereafter she had little or nothing to do with the rest of the interchange. So she really didn't need the scrambler, but not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. And very funny one too. Leslie Russell. Thank you, Lady C, for the video. I've always believed that truth will out. So that must be my last video. Her Majesty the Queen is playing the long game, and she is refusing to engage with H and his wife. I refuse to say or to write her name. Perhaps we could all do this? Harry's wife? My question is, did H return to the UK in order to negotiate about money? No, he did not. He returned to boost his profile. He returned to bury his grandfather, the grandfather whose last days he helped to make more of a misery than they would otherwise have been. I'm sure without any compunction or guilt whatsoever, he showed up. And no, Prince Philip was not a rich man. Prince Philip, when he got married, had just a few pounds. I think he had less than $10 to his name. Lord Mountbatten used to give him and his other nephew, David Milford Haven, £5 a week pocket money, so that they would actually be able to go out and go to parties and, go to nightclubs and be careful with that little bit of money that they had. Because, of course, neither of them needed to pay rent because their grandmother lived in Kensington Palace and they had family homes that they could stay in. So they didn't need to pay rent, but they did need to pay their way, and neither one of them had any money. Prince Philip's total income, aside from the £5 a week from Lord Mountbatten, was his salary as a naval officer, and that was chicken feed. So there was never any great deal of money that Prince Philip had. He wasn't about money. Harry has been left quite a tidy sum by his mother, which has been invested wisely and well. So Harry, as long as he doesn't dissipate his fortune, will never starve. But money from Prince Philip, I'm afraid, of no consequence, because Prince Philip was not a rich man. So he came over to ostensibly honour his grandfather by burying him, but also he knew that it would look good with the world at large. He knew that. So, Malibu Bliss. MM doesn't even look black. What's wrong with people? I'm black. Racism existed, but come on, she looks like a Spanish or Italian woman. How can she really pretend that that was the problem? Her skin colour? How? Love it, my dear, love it. You've hit the nail on the head. You have said exactly what the reality is. How can a woman who made sure that she eradicated all evidence of a sub-Saharan African heritage and has presented herself as white as it is possible to be, claim that she was the victim of colour prejudice? How can she? People didn't even know that she was a woman of colour. But they magically managed to be prejudiced against her. It's all in her head. And from her head, it's ended up via her tongue for all of us. We are dealing with a really very disordered individual. And again, I will say, we need to have compassion for somebody whose thought processes are as skewed as hers are. And to expect us to believe it is just beyond preposterous. And what is actually rather sad is how she has pressed the button of racial ill-feeling in such a way that she has people who have genuinely suffered from prejudice backing her up So true victims are backing her up, identifying with her, because they think that she has endured what they endured. Then, of course, there are the opportunists, the Oprahs, the Gayles of this world, who have also jumped on the bandwagon. Not that they have suffered any prejudice, because, I mean, I've been interviewed by Gayle King, and she's a perfectly pleasant woman, and she's a perfectly competent interviewer, but is she genius? No, she's not. She's not really that good an interviewer, let me tell you. She's no Joan Rivers or Clive Anderson. That much I will say. I've been interviewed by many, many, many interviewers over the decades, and she is on the lower third of the percentages of capability. Let's put it that way. Oprah, brilliant, brilliant. Look at how she played. She was wonderful in gaining the backing of middle-class white women all over America for them to make her into the richest black woman on earth. And only after they had shown her and her bank account that they liked her, and clearly her color had nothing to do with their perception of her, and they certainly didn't dislike her because of her color, because they liked her with her color, not even despite her color, but with her color. She then decided, time to play the race card. It's a new act, and it's a new day, and let's play the race card. Very sick, very sick. Carolyn Service, what are your thoughts on the so-called film to be made on the life and death of Princess Diana, with input from Harry and Meghan? Well, I will have lived to see everything, if that materializes. I would hope for Harry's sake it never does, because he will be not only up there with Judas Iscariot and Quisling, but he will actually have maybe even pipped them at the post. I do not see how anybody with scruples or a conscience could make a movie of that nature. Having said that, Harry is also not capable of making a movie about his mother's life or his mother's death, because Harry, despite being her son, still doesn't have a handle on the reality of what his mother was as an individual, of what her life truly was like, of what she was truly like as a person, in all her glory and all her failings. He has no concept. Every word that he says tells me that he has absolutely no measure of the reality of his mother. None whatsoever. How's he going to make a movie about her? Well, I suppose it will be like all of the other rubbish movies that have been made about her. All of the lies that have been told about her, both pro and contra, by the way. Diana was a very interesting personality, and she had a lot going for her. And, she deserved respect in many ways. But was she a saint? Was she an angel? By her own account, no. And I think we can take her at her word. And certainly she is not the victim that Harry has made her out to be. She was not the victim of the press. They did not chase her into a death that was ill-deserved. Her death was ill-deserved, but it was purely because she did not have on a seatbelt. It's also because she was being chased by the paparazzi, whom she had contacted herself. I spoke to several of them when she died, who confirmed to me that she herself had phoned them up to tell them where she was. She invited them to chase her. You are not the victim of people you have invited to chase you, just because the outcome of the chase is tragic. And the reason why it's tragic is that you did not wear a seatbelt. One could actually argue, I'm going to say now, that Diana actually bears some responsibility for Dodi's death and the death of the driver, because 2 people died aside from her in that crash. And let's face facts, that crash would not have happened had Diana not rung up the paparazzi so that they would give her chase. So I think Harry really needs to get his thinking cap on if he has a head with a brain in which he can think, because there's some doubt as to whether he really does or not. Now, I do not wish to take the view that Harry is anything but a loving son, and that Harry, having been spoiled by his mother, is, like many not very intelligent people, lazy enough to think that the lack of reality trumps reality. Nothing trumps reality. Nothing. Until you embrace the realities of a situation, which means both the good and the bad, the positive and the negative, the constructive and the destructive, you are not embracing the realities of life. You are living in a fool's paradise. The truth is a beautiful thing. It sets you free. It also means that you don't make an idiot of yourself. And Harry, regrettably, is not only an idiot very often, but he makes an idiot of himself with some of the statements that he comes out with. All very dramatic and all very hyper-emotional and all very sensationalistic, but all very unrealistic. And he's coming up for 40. He needs to actually understand that at some point you need to grow up. As some people would say, please smell the coffee. Belladrome. Has anyone heard the goss that apparently Oprah has stopped taking Harry's wife's calls as she found out about her moon bump? Probably just nonsense, but hilarious if true. Well, Belladrome, you have me, my dear, at a slight loss. I'm not sure what goss is, but I suspect it's gossip. And for I also am perplexed as to what a moon bump is. I have no idea what a moon bump is. So I'm afraid I can't answer the question. However, if I have surmised correct, anyway, I'm being naughty. I think I know exactly what you mean, so I will answer the question. Wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it be funny Oh, I can tell you something. If anything's approaching a situation like that had ever taken place, and I'm not saying that I believe any of this at all, and nor am I casting aspersions upon anybody's bump, whether it's a moon bump or any other sort of bump. Uh, I'm certainly not casting any aspersions on anyone, nor am I saying how they came to acquire the bump, whatever the bump is, whether it was through one form or another. I'm making none of those assertions. I know the law, and I am never going to make certain assertions. Just not going to. I'm too attached to my money. I'm not going to share it with Megsy baby. No way, Jose. But isn't it entertaining that this sort of story is doing the rounds? I have no idea whether the story is actually of any merit whatsoever. Maybe Oprah did hear something, and maybe Oprah did decide, and maybe it's nothing to do with the bump. Maybe it's to do with some other form of a bump and Oprah decided she better bump Megsy baby off her platform before Megsy baby completely destroys what is left of her credibility. Who knows? Or maybe it's all pie in the sky. I really don't know. And quite frankly, I think since the whole situation is farcical, and although we're dealing with human beings, we are dealing with human beings whose level of farcicality is so acute that they are entertaining us at their own expense, and they don't realize it. They think that they are enlightening us as to how wonderful they are and how special they are. Well, they certainly are enlightening us as to how special they are. It's just that it's not the sort of special that they seem to think it is. And on that note, I would say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. Please, if you want to ask any questions, do so in the comments section. They will come to me. And thank you very much. And please, if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, share, and press the notification bell. God bless.